Have you ever wondered what Call of Duty maps the developers love playing the most? Even if you haven't before, you're definitely thinking about it now. And I have the answer to that question today because the Treyarch developers who make the maps were interviewed just before Black Ops 6 was released and asked what their favorite Black Ops maps of all time were. And they answered with 15 different maps from Black Ops 1 to Black Ops Cold War, and even gave one Black Ops 6 map. So, this is the Treyarch devs' top 15 Black Ops maps of all time. Standoff from Black Ops 2. This one is a no-brainer. It is loved by the community and is a great map all around. They specifically loved this map for domination in large part due to the B flag location. They specifically used the words, "There was no safe space." And they might not have meant anything by that, but it sounds like a shot at the Infinity Ward developers for saying they wanted safe spaces on maps for players in MW 2019, which makes me love that comment by Treyarch even more. Another point they said was that Standoff was great for all weapon types from sniping all the way down to shotguns, and that's something they like to do for all their maps, or at least try to. That way every type of player can enjoy it. And I think this is something every COD developer should be thinking about when they're creating new maps. How can we craft something that everyone can enjoy rather than let's make something people can level up their weapons the fastest on? And one thing you'll notice in the video is that most of the maps will be from earlier Black Ops titles. Evac from Black Ops 3. I like this one, but definitely would not be in my top 5 Black Ops 3 maps. And the reason they like it so much is because this is where they figured out how to use the advanced movement in the game well. We have to remember, this was Treyarch's first and only attempt at having jetpacks and wall running. So, they built Evac as a playground to figure out a way to utilize all the advanced movement and be able to combo it together. With knowing this, it makes perfect sense why they had the middle lane cut through the map and go to all the different areas where you could take advantage of the wall running. And their motto with building Evac was essentially, wouldn't it be cool if you did this? And then they'd make it happen. They wanted to challenge themselves to figure everything out with this map, then incorporate parts of that into the rest of Black Ops 3. The best part about Evac, in my opinion, is that you could still play it boots on the ground and do fine. So even the most advanced map in Black Ops 3 still played well the old school way. Cool to see this one get some love. Also, I want to make it clear that these maps aren't ranked in any particular order by Treyarch. These are just the ones that they love. Cracked from Black Ops 1. Of all the options they had from this game, they picked Cracked. How did this make it in here? This isn't even a top 10 map from the game. Apparently they did a bunch of playtesting on it and first tried out the RCXD here. Apparently they tested it out here because it was a larger map with some open space and thought of the RC as a ground UAV almost, but it had the extra reward of blowing up an enemy at the end. And in their opinion, the best part of the map was the middle where the B flag would be placed in domination. And somehow they said that the best way to clear it was by using the RCXD. Don't get me wrong, it was fun to use, but it certainly was not the best way to clear anything out. The final thing they loved about Cracked was that it held the Vietnam aesthetic of Black Ops 1, which no one can argue that. I think that is something lost with Call of Duty today, having the entire game fit the theme. But that's more of an issue with the store and microtransactions than the launch maps. And if you're enjoying the video, please hit that like button so I know if you want me to keep on making these kind of COD videos. Nuketown from Black Ops 1. We knew this would be in the video, but we got some really interesting details about it. Nuketown was not a production map, meaning that the studio wasn't planning on making it. And one of the people being interviewed was the developer who made Nuketown. He explains that it only became a thing because the Treyarch team had an idea to create a tiny map based on a nuclear test town, and he immediately fell in love with that idea and he began working on it even though it wasn't on his schedule. So he basically took his free time creating the map that has become synonymous with Call of Duty. He said it only took him a couple days to make something playable, and that his whole thought process while making it was to take all of the elements that he normally used to make a multiplayer map and put them into a tiny map. That way it wouldn't just be chaos, but controlled chaos. And if you were curious, his examples of normal elements on a multiplayer map was having overwatches in 3 lanes. And he says what we see now with Nuketown is essentially what he came up with right off the bat, which isn't normal for maps that usually have some changes done after the playtests. He said the rest of the Treyarch team played it and loved it immediately. This led to the team contributing to the map immediately, with adding the mannequin Easter egg and effects artists adding things like butterflies as a specific example. He said they essentially had no rules while adding things to Nuketown because it wasn't a real map, but as we all know, this became one of the all-time great Call of Duty maps. And as he'd like to say, the first tiny map that had a design concept the same as any other Treyarch map would, to make it play like a regular map. Express from Black Ops 2. This one is loved by the community, but isn't brought up as much because of the amount of all-time great maps from this game. They described it as a twist on the traditional 3-lane design that they love to use. The main thing they wanted to change on the map was verticality, which isn't really what you think of when you play Express. But if you think about it, one side of the map leads to low ground and the other has walkways above the trains while also being able to walk along the top of the trains. Then there's also stairs to walk down on that side as well. So there's actually more high and low ground areas than you really initially think of on Express. They also like the interactable train that would go through the map throughout the game because it could run you over or buy you some time to make a flanking push and led to implications in objective game modes. And if you guys like the content and want to be a part of the community ranking tournaments, please subscribe. Just hit that button, it's free. I appreciate all of you a lot. Pines from Cold War. I know a lot of people really enjoyed this one. I didn't love it for 6v6 because I thought it played way too slow, but in 12v12 it played much better and it showed off how nice the layout was with the great use of verticality, something they might have learned from Express. The biggest part of the map that they liked was what the art team did by making it truly feel like you were going through a 90s mall. I'd have to agree that the setting being a retro mall was a cool environment that will make everyone immediately think of Back to the Future. Then having the stores be open to use as flanking routes was nice. I just wish that they didn't have some of the parking lot as part of the map. It made it moderately bigger for absolutely no reason because almost none of the fighting took place there and was used only as an extra spawn location for one of the teams. But overall, it was an interesting map that will be remembered from Cold War. Slums from Black Ops 2. Another map that gets brought up all the time as one of the best from this game. It usually loses out when comparing it to the other top tier maps from Black Ops 2, but everyone remembers it fondly. And the main reason Treyarch devs love Slums was because of seeing Scump dominate a game in MLG on it. They go on to talk about how they love the competitive scene in Black Ops 2, and my main question from this is why don't they go back to making their competitive scene like it was in 2012? I think everyone in the community liked it more as well. Keep the competitive scene to ranked play and the casual scene to pubs instead of them both being the competitive scene. But overall, Slums was looked at highly by Treyarch as a great competitive map, which is why they have it on their list. Deprogram from Cold War. Yet another unexpected pick by the dev team. I have a video on the most forgotten map from every Call of Duty, and I actually picked Deprogram from Cold War, and now I'm seeing it as one of the Treyarch dev team's favorite maps is wild. I will say that it is an incredibly unique and cool idea with putting the player inside of Adler's head with his fragmented mind. They mentioned a few reasons why they love it. First was the art style and the freedoms it gave them while creating it. Second was how much close quarters combat it had for a mid-sized map and allowed for SMGs to work great. Lastly, it was the red doors on the map, which may sound a little weird without explaining what the red doors did, which was allow the player to teleport around the map and were the areas to compete for causing more fights and faster gameplay. However, this made the spawn system way more challenging than normal, and they had to find out a way to make it difficult to teleport trap enemies. So this was almost like a riddle they had to solve because they had to break down their normal formula and create an almost completely brand new system for spawning just on this map. They figured it out by having a bunch of playtests until it worked. The main criteria I'm seeing for Treyarch's favorite maps are either the ones they spent the most time and effort on or the ones that they just loved playing, which seem like pretty good reasons to me. Satellite from Cold War. Bro, what are you doing here? This might be the most surprising one on the list for me. Most of the other unexpected maps here have legitimate reasons that make it understandable why the Treyarch devs love them. The best part of this map was how good the score streaks were on it, and while I don't think Satellite is bad, it's just super mid. So let's get into why Treyarch liked it so much. It's because it was a design challenge for them with how terrain heavy it was, with no buildings, and the only thing that wasn't terrain was the fallen satellite. But their favorite part of the map was the fallen satellite area, essentially a King of the Hill battle. And I can't argue with that. It did create a nice flow to the middle of the map, but then the other side with the dunes was a sniper's paradise. I suppose looking at it from their perspective, it was unique to create a map that was basically all natural terrain, and I appreciate their willingness to try out new things instead of just have the same maps over and over again. Raid from Black Ops 2. If they didn't say this one, I think the COD community would have rioted. And they said the development of Raid was the exact opposite of Nuketown. Instead of being great and not needing any changes, Raid started off really rough, and they had to completely redesign the map multiple times, which is honestly kind of shocking with how well it turned out. But with each redesign, they kept something from the previous one that they liked. Essentially, each area of the map was from one of the redesigns, which is why each section of the map felt unique and was cool. The example they used of carrying something over was the roundabout, which is the first thing you picture when Raid is brought up because it was the loading screen. Sometimes a struggle can create greatness. The developers had the time for trial and error and learned from their mistakes until they made a masterpiece that supported all playstyles and modes, which is why Raid became a great competitive map and a fan favorite in pubs as well. But I think the most interesting part of this is that a Black Ops 6 map was created with large inspiration from Raid. And just before I reveal what it is, leave your guess as to which map it is. Pause the video if you need to. And it is Protocol, that was inspired by Raid, but got pushed a bit farther to take advantage of the Omni movement. And I suppose I can see it with the circular area directly in the middle of the map to match the roundabout from Raid. But the main things they focused on bringing over that they called high-level design ideas was the terrain elevation differences, which helps feed into the different playstyles. But as I said earlier, they pushed those ideas farther for the Omni movement, so theoretically any gun you played with, you could have fun with on Protocol. That's why they made the elevation changes even bigger and added ascending zip lines. The goal of Protocol was for people to enjoy it like they enjoyed playing Raid. I don't think it quite captured that, but I personally think it's solid and better than most of the Black Ops 6 maps. Carrier from Black Ops 2. I was not expecting to see this one get mentioned, mainly because Black Ops 2 had so many good maps that some get thrown to the background. And the reason they said Carrier was because it was a map that challenged them to do something they hadn't before. And they were successful there because it was very difficult for them to design. Pretty much, they thought no one in their right mind would develop a map on top of a carrier because it's flat. There were two things they focused on to make it well. First, they wanted to take something from the awesome carrier moments in the campaign on the USS Obama and wanted to replicate that in multiplayer. And second, make it fun. Such a simple point, but such an important point. And just like Raid, they said they had to redesign it multiple times to get what they wanted. Essentially, the devs said no pain, no gain with creating Carrier. In one of their early versions, they allowed players to get in the jets and shoot missiles from them, almost like taking tanks from World at War. And in the end, they used crashed jets and damaged parts of the ship to help give cover and have slight elevation changes to make the map work. While I don't think many fans would rank it in the top 15, everyone enjoyed it. Firing range from Black Ops 1. If this wasn't on the devs list, I would have been upset along with the entire Call of Duty community, because this is the epitome of a great COD map. They liked that players always had to keep their head on a swivel to do well. Pretty much, it was a mid-sized map that played like a small map, without the downsides of random grenade spam and easy spawn traps. They made the trailers and buildings for close quarters combat and left the middle open to allow for more mid-range fights that would be advantageous for ARs and LMGs. Then they made the central tower as an ultimate power position that came at the cost of being extremely difficult to reach with the giant ladder. But they wanted it there for a potential reward to players who had good aim to go on streaks. Then they also left the openings large enough to make it easy to throw grenades in there. That way it wouldn't be too much of a nuisance. And pretty much like what they said with Satellite, they wanted to be a king of the hill spot where people would be fighting over to get there. I think it worked out pretty well because the risk almost never paid off, making it not an annoying spot where the campers won, and instead fed into the fast-paced nature of firing range where kill streaks dominated. Kowloon from Black Ops 1. This is the only paid-for DLC map on their list, and it has never been remade, which makes it a very interesting pick because I think many people never even played it. And there were two prominent reasons they created Kowloon, with one being it was difficult to make and they wanted to challenge themselves, and the second reason was the multiplayer devs seeing the campaign developers building out Kowloon for the iconic campaign mission Numbers. They loved the setting so much with the rain and lightning. Then they liked the idea of having the campaign atmosphere brought over to the multiplayer to create a setting that fit perfectly with the game. The reason it was so difficult to make for them was because of the setting, with all the different roofs, verticality, and giant gap between the buildings, which is why they created the first ever zip line in a multiplayer map, which made it a little bit more difficult to create good spawns for them because of the ability to change sides of the map so quickly. Even though it was an unexpected pick by them, I understand it, because they cared so much about it in the process of making it and having it fit the game's theme so well, something that isn't as big of a concern for the developers today. Yemen from Black Ops 2. I'm so happy this one got brought up because I think it is one of the most underrated maps of all time. A lot of people have probably forgotten about it too, because even though Treyarch loves it, they have never remade it. So the last time we saw it was in 2012. Not only does it have a great flow and a good layout, it also looks beautiful while still fitting in with the Black Ops 2 theme. It supports close quarters combat with its numerous buildings, as its setting is in a city. It also supports mid to long range combat with its power positions and high ground areas around the entirety of the map. Basically, one of their fundamentals, it supports every playstyle while having no major cons to it. While I don't think it's an all-time amazing map, it is very good and I would love to see it come back. And I'm sure there are maps you think the devs should have put on their list, and if you want to see the community's top 25 maps in Call of Duty history that includes all Call of Duties, click here, you won't be disappointed. I'll catch you next time, peace.